The amazing thing is that all churches and all sacred places, meeting places, will have a very special spot that people are drawn to. And it's a subtle energy spot, and you can discover it by dowsing. And the wonderful thing is that this vortex of energy, which is created there by prayer or by meditation, responds to human consciousness. Because churchyards are wonderful places to dowse. You can do all sorts of things. You can find out the earth energy centre of the churches. You can find out so many different things. Very famous people like Guy Underwood did masses of work on recording underground streams and energy patterns, or on churches and cathedrals and all sorts of ecclesiastical places. Of course, Guy Underwood made a very special dowsing tool of his own. Made a very, very thin wire and little tiny loops, and it whittled around in some way, and he was very, very accurate with it. I find it very difficult to use. And normally dowsing is done by either a pendulum or a rod, and the pendulum looks something like that, and you get results with it whistling around either one way or the other, and the rod is something like that. Some of you might have decided to use rods or pendulums or anything else before, and each one of them in itself is not important, but it's important that you relate to it, that it's part of you and it's an extension of you, and it's a believable thing because you have to use it to develop a yes and no, and that the whole basis of dowsing is about developing an accurate yes and no. There are more dowsing tools than there are dowsers. And the absolute basic tool is this one. This is the one that I talked before about. It was cut from a hedge, and we have to tension it. The fellows have to be very careful, because once you start to find the water, it goes like that. The girls have an equal problem, because very often when they start doing it, it goes up. And I've seen there great big lumps on their head. Very, very strong action. And of course it was was okay right through the centuries, because some of the authorities didn't like dowsing. They called it divining, and they said it was the work of the devil. And to walk about with a thing like that was like walking with a Kalashnikov. So what they did was cut this from the hedge near where they had to work, because the big thing was to find water. And if anybody came along who was in authority, they'd just break it up, put it under their arm. They were collecting sticks for the fire. We do a little one for the kids because they can't tension them. A tiny little hazel twig there, and they do exactly the same thing, and it's great. The kids are wonderful because they reckon this old grey-bearded fella could do it, they could do it too. There's never any question. And there's a lovely old chap called Jack Benny who makes lots of these tools. He's 80-something now. How can I say that? He's 80-something. I'm 80-something. He's an old man. And that's a pair of horsewhips with a little copper things on it, and that's just as effective. And you can even lose an old bit of curtain rod with a bit of tape around it. And you have to tension it in exactly the same way, but it has exactly the same effect. You pull it out and it's tensioned, and it gives you your indication, the answer to your question. The important thing is the nature of the question. In order to phrase the question, you've got to decide very, very precisely what you're looking for. You actually have to teach yourself a sequence of questions which get you nearer and nearer and nearer the target every time. And each time you use your yes and no, and you go by whatever answer you get from there to phrase another question that gets you nearer what you're looking for. You must develop a very positive yes and no. A yes and no you can absolutely trust. Now this is difficult because what you're trying to do is to get rid of the answers that you are expecting from your logical mind. You're accessing a source of the answer to the question which is not from logic. It's from another part of your mind or your brain, or from the etheric, or whatever you like to call it. And you have to learn to access that, and the only way you can access it is to practice. And you find you're actually dowsing properly when you get an answer to a question that is not the one you expected.
Well, my name's Val Johnson and I dowse for health. We find that the root cause of illness is often related to diet, intolerances and allergies. When we're looking at diet, we're looking at whether people are have an intolerance to metals and environmental problems as well, and beverages, all across the board. When you dowse, you can dowse for anything. If the intention is there, you get help to find the answers. But keep it simple. Don't ask too many questions, just keep it very simple. Just ask one question at a time to allow, you know, the answer to come through.
It's a very discreet model, which is fiberglass, which was used actually by a lovely American lady who was dowsing in cathedrals, and she used to tension this thing, and she was quite plump with a fur coat. Nobody could see what she was doing, but she would douse it for energy in the cathedrals in exactly the same way as you do with a big stick. This is the one I like. It's got a flattened handle on, and I can tell the strength of the energy field on it because I could feel the thing turning. It's very difficult to do that with a round rod, and this is why I use this flattened thing. And when I started, and the first piece of dowsing I did was to walk up the road up here and see whether there was any energy between St Michael's Mount and Trencrom. And I said, is there an energy line between Trencrom Hill and St Michael's Mount? And I walked up the road and I just got that much. And it changed my life completely. And it's taken me around the world for the last 25 years. This one I made from 10mm steel. There are some big forces, earth magnetic forces around here. And I just wanted to see how strong these forces were. And I found that this had worked in exactly the same way. So I thought I'd crack it once and for all. So I made some of these. These rods are 2.5 pounds weight. And once you get them up there, they're just as accurate as the other ones, and they pull towards this magnetic force. So we're dealing with some extraordinary, mysterious thing in dowsing that allows you to detect forces that you can't normally detect. Now the other one, it really intrigued me, was by Alan Heiss, an American dowser, and he did a lot of his dowsing in cathedrals. And he used to find the stuff like that. You wait till the priest pass and go. There's a car aerial. This is one by Rodney Smith, a local dowser in Devon, and he calls it his wiggly thing. And it's about tensioning again. He uses it in exactly the same way, but he tensions this thing out, and when he's over his target, it flips over. I find it slightly difficult to use, but a lot of people swear by it. And this is a bobber. And if you prefer the bobber, it's this. I'll just use that. This little energy centre here. I'll just use that as a demonstration, because when you use a bobber, I find it quite difficult. But with practice, you can keep it pretty steady. And when you get over the point of the earth energy thing there, it starts wobbling. You don't even need to cut your wire coat hanger and make it into L-rod. You could use it exactly as it is if you like, and it will indicate exactly the same way that a proper dowsing rod does. And you can even use a child's plastic one, although it's very difficult to justify going down Penzance High Street with one of these.